start off by requesting permission from the elders to begin. And with permission from the elders to begin, I am Brother Sam, and I'm excited about an opportunity today to hear my elder and my teacher, Brother Iman, who is going to come before us here at the African Information Center, and he's going to be talking to us about the other place, his experience on the other side. So without any further ado, let me take this opportunity and introduce Brother Iman, and let's give him all a hand clap as he comes to speak.
Hotep.
And let me correct you on it. We are African Information Communications.
Communications, all right.
Did we get that? Huh?
Yeah, we got it.
You got it? Okay. What I'm going to be speaking on this evening is going to be reference to the threshold. Around about sometime, so many years ago, back in the 1960s, in the middle of the 1960s, I was living on Jefferson and Ferry above the drugstore there. What's the name of the drugstore? Dexter, that's it. Dexter's drugstore. Right across the street from Mr. Burdine's place. Up on the second floor there, I lived with some brothers, a group of us, in an apartment there. And I had quite a bit of time on my hand. And there was about 3 of us that lived there, but we had a larger apartment there on one side of that particular flat. On the other side, I think it was a doctor's office or something like that. And so while I was there, I was experimenting. And one of the experiments that I was doing was breathing exercise. I had a lot of time on my hand, and I had a lot of things on my mind. And I began to do this particular breathing exercise, and I developed to the point where I was able to hold my breath for a half an hour at a time. So there were different things that I found that I was able to do. I found myself able to walk long distances. I got in the habit of walking all the way from Ferry over to Clinton and Seneca Street every day and back. And I found myself able to pick up heavy loads weighing several hundred pounds and walking with them. And got to the point where I could walk 3 and 4 miles, never even put them down. So as time went by, I found myself being concerned about taking this on other levels. I saw what it could do for me physically, and I began to be concerned about some other particular deeper things, more metaphysical. And so I began to do experiments with I began to do different type of experiments in reference to seeing where I could go with this. And one of the things I found is that I found myself getting where I could put myself into this particular levels of trance. First, I started off through breathing exercises. I would put my body to sleep, and I started off like put my feet, and then I would put my legs to sleep, and then I would put my body to sleep, my arms, and then I would be into another particular state of trance. At that time, I didn't know the levels of trance as, the verbiage of it, dealing with the alpha and the beta and delta, and I think there's another fourth stage, beta. But I knew I was on the right path, and that it was more about doing it than just merely knowing the words of it. I could learn the words later on. And I was finding my way to the point where I was able to, I would use the throat chakra, and the throat chakra, I recognized it as being blue in color. Later on, I learned that the throat chakra was considered by the particular people who practiced this extensively over in India and parts of the East as a blue chakra. I had read about chakras, but when I read about chakras, they gave me the impression that these things were very hard to learn and very hard to do. And I was finding out that it's just simply you doing it. That where it might have taken somebody many years to reach that level, that your particular level of development and being, well, you might reach it, in a matter of months, So I was reaching, I didn't know where I was really going, but I knew I wanted to be able to expand my consciousness. And I was able to go on fasts and go without food, and also there was a speeding up of my particular mental faculties because of this. Also, and that I noticed that, I was a stronger person physically, healthy-wise. So, I was to the point where I could hypnotize myself or program myself where I did different experiments. Like I would go downtown hypnotize myself, go downtown with a blindfold and walk around down there and go back home, and and had no particular collisions with anybody or a car or anything like that. So then I noticed that I would catch the bus and I would travel to the outskirts of town and turn around and go on these long walks. And these walks, were long and pleasurable, out there walking in the particular urban area, suburbs of the city. So one night I laid down and I placed myself into position, and I went into a very deep sleep. And where I found myself was, I found myself in deep space. Well, I hadn't meant to go that far. I was satisfied just coming to the window and jumping out the window and flying all over the city, and I was pretty satisfied with that. I wasn't greedy, but I had jumped into something and I had went across the threshold, and I didn't really mean to. I wasn't terrified. But I realized where I was at. I was conscious of where I was at. And I was extremely, observing where I was at. And how I knew I was into very deep spaces as I looked, and I didn't see no stars. Now, I was raised in New Jersey, out in the suburbs, and I was very familiar with how many stars there are up there to the visible eye. A lot of stars on a summer night. And here I was there, and I didn't feel anything. I mean, there was no cold, and there was no heat. There was nothing. It was just mine. And there was this incredible feeling of peace. Oh, it was peace. Yeah, it was peace. And so I observed, I was trying to go into the body, which was not even involved. Yeah, my particular center was another center that I had awakened, and I was in this situation of peace, and it seemed like anything was possible. It was just possible. And many times I surveyed the whole area around me to see, wasn't there a specter of light? And there was no lights. It was just darkness. But yet there was something else was pulling, eventually began to pull at me, like something that was pulling me, and that was something was pulling me back to the planet. And eventually it gradually pulled me back to my bed where I was laying there, asleep.
Were you disappointed?
No.
When you came back?
No, I didn't bother to be things like disappointed or anything like that. I just observed it. That's what I did. I just simply observed it. I knew then that I had read where people had done these things, and had experienced it and wrote books on it. And that was my particular personal experiment, an experience with that. And I felt for days I had a lot of energy, very high energy. Yeah, even higher than what I normally was having. And there were several people that saw me after I had that experience, and they was, and what brother told me, he says, "I see you coming, man." And what had happened to me was, I was a guy who weighed about 225 pounds, and I went down to the weight of 165 pounds, and people didn't recognize me. They didn't recognize me, And it seemed like that the way I felt like I felt when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. That's how I felt, energetic-wise. Now, sometime years later, I had other experiences too that dealt with me moving through back and forth through that particular, what I call it, the threshold, or it could be the mirror or the window or the curtain, from moving from from the mundane world here to this other particular place. And this place is not a place that you gotta make or bring into existence. It's a place that just sits over there all the time. And I guess what it is if we're dealing with the human form, you realize that in the human form we have centers, and we have to learn to use these centers. These centers are dormant in us, and as we just got through looking at a particular tape relevant to a person who was teaching on how he was talking about, over a course of time, how man has evolved, and that he called it these states of consciousness. And he said that consciousness was the awareness to awareness or something. Yeah. Two terms that he used there, awareness. He used it twice. Awareness of awareness. Yeah, I thought that was amply put, very well put. And that how consciousness is a very, very, very wonderful thing. Yeah. And he also made it clear that when you're talking about consciousness, you're not talking about the physical world. That the physical world is what it is, physical. And it's fixed. But how many things, and he also stated that the Western world is on the physical kingdom. And that was really stirring. That's a clear thought. Because the height of their particular so-called intellectualism has a physical base. They themselves always stated that when it came to the spiritual matters, nobody can surpass the African. They admit that themselves. And everything that they call God, religion, theology, whatever, they got that, and they know it. They got it from the people of Africa and the East. And it's not anything unusual or thought to be kooky when people who are of the East, who practice this as a cultural, everyday cultural thing in their particular cultures, such as the people that live in southern part of India. There's nothing for a child to be playing out there in the yard and see a man coming down the road with a cup in his hand, a bowl. And they are familiar with men like that coming through the land, and the woman will come out with a pot and give the man some food in his bowl, knowing that he's a man that's on that particular path, the path of that study, or a type of study that's relevant to reaching a level where he can transcend the physical order of things. I was in Detroit, not Detroit, I'm sorry, in Los Angeles 5 years ago. And while I was there with the brothers and sisters in that particular area, I happened to develop a fistula. And the fistula is a part where your buttocks part of your body, you can become constipated and you can strain yourself, causing some of the fetus, rather than to pass through where it's supposed to pass through, it tries to find a way through your flesh. And it makes it goes down there and it causes a cyst or a boil like to form there. And I had one before years ago. The doctors cut it open, lanced it, and then you have to go to cyst baths, and the cyst baths clean it out and finally heal it from the inside out. It takes quite a bit of time for that to take place. Yeah, this time they didn't do that. They did something else. But whatever they did, they didn't do it right. Or they was experimenting. And it caused me to, I was in pain. But I got in contact with a doctor, and I wanted a doctor. I didn't just want to go into the emergency room on my own because I was too far from Buffalo. But they got very good hospitals out there. Yeah. But I didn't realize how good a hospital they were. And so the doctor, he was so doggone negative, and he had been recommended to me. And so it stopped me, it made me hesitate. And while I hesitated, I got ill. I don't remember even being as ill as they said I was, but I was in the bed and at my daughter's house, and I was I was really sick, and but I don't remember the pain. I don't remember, but they said I was in great pain, and they took me to the hospital, and they found out, what was wrong with me, and they took me into the room and began to have this operation. And they had this black man. They say he was a black man. He came in and said that he was like military. He moved like he was a robot or something. And he performed this operation on me. Well, after he performed the operation on me, while having this operation put up on me, which is really considered a minor operation, my heart stopped. And they took me and pronounced me dead, pushed me over in the corner. And 15 minutes later, my heart started ticking again. And then they said they brought me out, and they, took me and dressed me up and put me in took me up to a bed, another bed in a particular ward. So after around about 10 days passed, they wanted to pull the plug on me. And my daughter, she wouldn't let them do that. She said, no. She said, this is my father, and yes, he's a holy man. Says, leave him alone. Say, he'll be back. Say, that's my father. I say, I know, he told me, about this could possibly happen. And, and what to do. She said, leave him alone. He'll be back. And So, meanwhile, while they were on the outside looking at me in the shape that I was in this coma, things were happening inside. What I experienced was I became aware that I was in a dark place. It was pitch dark, in the pit of darkness, as they say. And I was laying there and patiently, just being patient, I was there for a long time. I didn't count the hours. I didn't try to count them. I was just there, just there. I was there, and there was nothing I was doing. It wasn't too much more than just watching. That's what mostly I was doing. I was just watching this, looking at this, studying it. And as I kept looking out into the darkness, all of a sudden I saw a little speck of red, like that sign, the red of that particular sign on the wall there. I looked at it. And as I watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and larger, till I was able to see that I was in a round out like chamber with a high ceiling. Like it was circular, not square. It was all circular like. And this red light lit up that whole area. And then it seemed that I was in suspension. I was moving, and I moved towards the left. And on the left side, when I got over to the left side, there was a huge hallway. And a long hall, it was long. And I started moving down the hallway with the light in front of me. And that light began to pick up a change. It changed from brilliant bulletin red. It turned into a beautiful, beautiful, rich orange. And then as it moved down, it color became a brilliant yellow. And when I got down, the tunnel or the hallway had ended. And as I got to the very end of it, I came out of the tunnel. I happened to look to my right, and there was a dais set maybe about two or 3 feet, about 2 feet above the ground. And on there was, on that dais, it was a large dais, like in a restaurant, an outdoor restaurant. There were people all sitting around at tables. And some of the people I recognized right away as friends of mine that had died. And then I also saw people that I knew to be kin to me. They were there. And then there were other people there, and they were like kin too, but they were people that I had never met personally, but I knew they were my kin. And everybody was sitting at these tables all like this, relaxed. And everybody had this brilliant look. Brilliant look. And they were communicating. We weren't speaking, but we were communicating. And all of them were saying, "You got here, huh? Isn't it nice?" And I was saying, "Yeah." Sky was blue. I'm talking about a sky blue, like, phew, the best days you've ever seen sky blue. That's kind of sky blue it was. And the sun was so warm. It wasn't hot. It wasn't sticky. It was just penetratingly warm. You know? I mean, it was a tremendous atmosphere. And all these people, you know, they were there. You know? And we were of one mind. Phew. And I looked at that, and I said, well, now, this is what we're supposed to do. Everybody's talking about dying and what hell is like and what heaven is like. If this is what dying is all about, somebody's been playing a trick on us. And so, but there was, just before I got ready to step out into that light that I was following had turned brilliantly white. It was a white light. And I'd had experiences where that white light had shone to me years before that. But I would always shun it. I wasn't ready for it. And here it was right there. And so, I went over to touch the light. Because I just wanted to, inspect it, look at it. I went over to touch the light, and a voice spoke to me in my head. And the voice was a voice of, to describe it, to try to describe it, it was a voice that had no age to it. It was a young voice. But then it was not just a young voice. It was like a very ancient voice. And the voice, it didn't shout, it didn't talk authoritatively, but it was authority. It's kind of, when I heard it, right away, I said, yes, Lord. And the voice said to me, you have to go back. So, instead of me not saying much of anything, I had to ask a question. I said, I do, Lord, and I got no answer. So I said again, I said, well, sir, Lord, and I said, Lord, I said, do I have to go back and deal with those lazy Negroes and those crazy white people? That was my conversation. And I wasn't trying to be a wise guy. I was just being me. In other words, I went through all that I went through, and personality was still around. And I got no answer, which told me that I had gotten my answer. And I started on my way back. But to get back, it seems that I had to go some other particular places. And I found myself on a planet. And it wasn't this planet. It was a planet. And on this planet, there were people there. And it was a place where the sun was different. The sun was different. And the people walked around all day long with sticks in their hands, with a heavy stick on one side and sharp edge on the other side of the stick. And they used a stick to stick in the ground, because everywhere you would take a step, you would have to stick in the ground, because many times the ground was not a ground, it was a creature about as wide as, I'd say about maybe half as wide as this here particular room here. And this creature had had a mouth on both ends. Big, huge mouth on both ends. And he could disguise himself like the ground. And so the people would hit at the ground, you know, cause a creature like that, you get stuck, you jump out and get out your way. At at nighttime, everybody, as soon as the sun go down, everybody, you wouldn't see nobody out because they didn't walk around in the darkness there because of these creatures. Well, no, these weren't shapeshifters. These people, these things were just, you know, creatures that had evolved there. And the people would go inside, and once they got inside, they would light their fires. They had fireplaces and tables and things like that. And they would hold long conversations about God, religion, and theology. And that was one of the places that I traveled to. Another place that I went to was a futuristic city. And what we see on television, they're showing, it was a city like that a lot of things going on there that was where traffic didn't roll up and down the street. Traffic was moving through elevation, you know, it was elevated. There were particular roadways and things like that built up, and with different type of rapid transit systems, and domes over the city where they control the air and the heat of the city. You didn't have to have, right at this particular time, they can actually light up your house without having all these wires in your house, and they can heat these houses without having the heat coming the way it comes. Yeah, they can do it. They can do it. Yeah. They can easily do it, and they know they can. Well, that's the kind of places that I was traveling from one particular place to another. Some places were much more highly developed than others, and some places were more natural than others, and some places were highly futuristic and developed. And the thing about it is that I remember as a when I was a kid, about Buck Rogers, the things that they had predicted would be in the year the 25th century. We're finding some of these things have already come into existence, and we're only in the 21st century. How rapid things have happened, especially within the past 30-some years. And which me having that particular experience, that inner experience, was very, very tremendous to me. Yeah. It made me understand that a lot of things that I had been told and taught, that these things were highly possible. And
How long would you say that experience lasts?
that's another thing. I have not been able to discern the timing. It seemed like it was timeless. Mm-hmm. There's barely anything. There's no time is like a theory.
Yeah, it becomes physical then, man.
Yes. Before the Gregorian system came into existence, there were other systems anyway. Right today, the Ethiopians still use the Egyptian calendar. The Mayan calendar is down there in rock and stone, right down there in Central America.
So calendars are based on time.
No, didn't he just get through teaching us that they got two types of calendars? One is astrological, And one is another kind of time, a spiritual time. Yeah, yeah. That spiritual time thing is 260 days. It's not about no observant of physical things. Yeah, yeah,
Doesn't have to be that. Still part of consciousness, part of the mind.
yeah.
We're under physical consciousness, and because of that, that's how we get old.
Yeah, that's true. That's we get old by observing other people.
And you always think, so if you think when you're getting old, that's what you get. And also like this, it actually is not supposed to be time, and it's not supposed to be space.
Well,
Um,
the Scientology people call it mesh. Matter, energy, and space and time. But when they talk about mesh, they talk about mesh in a sort of a negative way. Because if your consciousness is locked in mesh, well, that's where you're at. But if you are a monad or a thetan, then you are a person who's you're a being. See, and I guess everybody is a being, but what level of being are you? Have you developed it or what? You know.
Have you ever given any thought to why you might have had that kind of experience?
Yes. My grandmother was a medium. And my grandfather, he was known to be, he had a reputation for seeing ghosts. I got a sister too. She was born with a veil over her face. So I heard these type of conversations as a small boy and things like that. That's the kind of conversations they talked about. My grandmother, she was a person, well, in fact, that through her, I mean, I became aware that I was related to a man named Allen, Richard Allen. She herself was an Allen. And so there's she was a person that she found out that she had to go on her own course, that she could no longer deal with organized religion. Yeah. When she was a girl, and she went to a special school there in North Carolina, Henderson, North Carolina, she learned about metaphysics, Christian Science. She when I became a Muslim, and I told her that I was a Muslim, she told me, she said, "Oh, you worship Allah." She already knew that. Yeah, because she was a study. She was a medium, and so under her tutelage, I mean, she began to teach me and open me up to such things like that. Yeah.
now tell us who Richard Allen is.
Richard Allen? Richard Allen was a black man that lived in Philadelphia, and he belonged to this Methodist church, where there were black people that went to this church, but the particular church majority of the membership was white. And they were doing pretty good there. Then one day it came up in the white people's minds that the blacks, they didn't want the blacks to use their, you have what is called, when you drink the wine and eat the bread. Yeah, what is that called? Huh? Yeah, it's a communion, yeah. All right, you drink the blood of Jesus and drink his and eat the pieces of little biscuits, and they began to get real panicky about it, and they didn't want the blacks to sit with them. They wanted the blacks to sit somewhere else, you know, in the church. So they were split down the middle behind a race issue, and so Richard Allen, he went across the street to a friend of his who had a stable, and they began to have their service over there at that stable. And out of that came this great movement with him in giving the leadership to it.
The first church, first black.
African Methodist Episcopal Church, yes. Yes, that's where it came from. Yeah. Yeah, he says, well, you know, you don't want us here, we'll leave, you know, and we're going to serve God, and whatever you say, that don't stop nothing. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm? Absalom Jones. Absalom Jones, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't know too much about my great grandfather, her father, my grandmother's father. But his name was Jeremiah Allen, and he's related to Richard Allen. He was a fellow who worked on boats. Yeah, that's what he would do. Go up and down the coast there, working on boats. And my grandmother came from Henderson to Philadelphia, and she later on met my grandfather, and she happened to be his third wife. His name was John Davis. She married John Davis, and John Davis, he was very exceptional too. He was able to go and get himself, make himself rich. Very hard-working fella. He wasn't no big giant guy either, but he was a very active man. And right there in Burlington, New Jersey, he went out into the woods and he would cut trees. And then he would take the trees and he would put winches on them and winch it all the way out to the road. And they would pick up his wood and take his wood to the lumber yard, paper factory, and they would cut the wood up. And he became a wealthy man back then. He was a troubleshooter. And he didn't have no, he was the kind of person that, you know, he didn't feel there was nothing he couldn't do. That's the kind of person he was. You know, and but anyway, my grandmother, she was very mediumistic. She would tell me which way I came, what I had for breakfast. She was able to do it, and she had people for miles around, lived 300 and 400 miles away, would come to visit her. You know. Huh? Yeah, she'd read them. Yeah, she'd read them. Yeah. When I was 14 years old, she read me, told me what was going to happen to me in my life and everything. Told me I was going to have a whole lot of kids. I'm scared to death.
Boy, you might do work.
That's what she called me, too. Yeah. She called me the mule. And I was the mule too. I was the mule. I was so good a mule until I started loving it. but she blessed me. Yeah, she took her oils and different things, and she blessed me. Yeah, blessed me from head to toe. Yeah.
So what do you think is next now? Now that you have experienced that, I mean, like you've made it to the 70s, which is not old. You haven't really gotten. What do you think is next? Or do you think it is next?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's coming in reference to a like situation, but
It didn't make you psychic.
no, I was already psychic before that happened. I always knew I was psychic, but you know, and when you're psychic, you don't run around waving it like it's a flag or something. I always tell you that, don't I?
I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, yeah. You're a person who is interested in metaphysics, but you can't be a blasting that everywhere.
You sure can.
No, no. See, one of the ways
Very careful.
you got to be careful.
Very.
Very careful. You know who you talk to. Yeah.
I don't care how confident they claim to be.
You know.
Or not.
Yeah.
Because there are so many beautiful things that you can do. You can walk through walls, you can do all kinds of things, but you can't discuss it with people because they get crazy, because they have been trained
That's right. That's right.
in the physical, so they don't know. That's why I ask people what is spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and they list both. The majority of the people do not know what spirit means, and spirit is energy, and it is every,
Where? Everywhere.
everywhere, every planet, every.
Yeah.
We have spirit.
Yeah. That's living in a human condition.
Yeah. Because we took on a human body. We decided, well, those will be parents now. There's a certain lesson to be learned and also a certain teaching to be done. The reason we picked our parents. Because I remember my mother used to always tell me, the baby picks the parents, right? So I said, oh God, I really did a bad job, you know.
And we all think have problems with that one. Because I look at my children and I wonder, oh, did I do that? I shake my head, you know. And everything they're doing, I have to, take credit for it, good or bad.
But you get older, you get wiser. And as you get older and wiser, you begin to give thanks for those parents. Whether they knew anything or not, it doesn't make any difference because the experience and the road you have traveled
Yeah.
is because of them and the environment they provided you. Whether the father married the mother or not, or wasn't even present. But there's a reason for everything. See, that's why for years, I was trying to understand what they mean when they say you're supposed to forgive somebody who's virtue in your past. If you've seen that movie, that play of the movie, Diary of an Angry Black Woman,
Mm-hmm.
Cicely Tyson told her daughter one of the most beautiful messages. And she said to her, you have to forgive this man for what he had done to her.
Yes.
But in that way, you can forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself for the madness. And then you can go on. Otherwise, you can't go nowhere if you don't forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And then
Yes, yes, yes. Very good, sister. Yes. That was a very good picture, wasn't it? Yeah.
I understand from some sources that it was the children who choose their parents.
Mm-hmm.
In all circumstances, we all pick. Because you could take, as I said before, two healthy people. I mean, there ain't nothing wrong with them. And they can't make a baby together. That's because the energy has not come in and say, well, I want to be a part of this energy.
Yeah, yeah. It has to come.
And you can get people who can have 10 children, and yet maybe a year go by and they can't get pregnant, or they can't, ain't nothing happen. And then a year go by, or 2 years go by, maybe they got 5 kids already, and 2 years go by, here comes up pops another baby. And they didn't use protection and all that kind of stuff. It's some deep, deep stuff. Spirit is the most powerful thing one could get into and understand, overstand, understand.
No, and it ain't hard.
No.
It just is.
It is. That's the only way to do it.
Because we, as you know, that if we were having drink what is that beer, 8% beer. If we were serving that every Monday night, that place down there would be packed.
You couldn't get them all there.
Couldn't get them out of there either.
Right. You see, this is not for everybody.
No, it's not for everybody.
This is not for everybody. Consciousness is not for everybody. You can, like, Buckle's been into it since 1990, that's 15 years. I've been in it since 1983. That doesn't mean I know so much more because I started a little earlier.
How you mean?
It was up to me. Huh?
How you mean? You say started
I
earlier.
started in the conscious movement of beginning to understand it and all that stuff in 1983. That was my beginning.
That's when it started here in Buffalo.
I thought they said 1990.
No, well, no.
Oh, yeah, it had to be before that, because...
Yeah, when ASCAT started, we kicked in then.
Oh, same time then.
Well, yeah, you know, we're in the same state now.
Yeah, but
we're on the other end of it, but we're here.
ASCAT has not grown.
Yeah.
ASCAT is still behind the times. They're very behind. And they know Richard King, and a lot of y'all never heard of Richard King.
Yeah, we
or
know.
Charles Finch.
We know both those men. We know both of them. We know both. We know Finch, and we know Tony Martin and all that. We know.
Well, Tony Martin is more political scientific, I guess.
Tony on the money.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah,
But I don't get metaphysics from him. I get
No. He's very good. As you said, he's a political scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, that type of thing. But who I really, Richard King and Charles Finch now,
But Richard
they're
King,
the early pioneers of metaphysics.
Richard King and Charles Finch both had participated with ASCAT.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they still do.
Yeah.
They still do. Nobody says they didn't. But ASCAT has not grown. They have not grown. They're still chest busters. That's what I get out of it.
Maybe you might want to explain those. You always remember to talk about there.
I don't want to take the bus. Go ahead.
No, we want to hear from you.
You get the mic.
Maybe some disagreement with that.
Chest busters meaning how great where we've been, to know where we are, to know where we've got.
That's history.
No.
That's history.
Yeah, I can go for that. But, and you think I'm going to throw my history away? No. Even though I'm into metaphysics, I don't throw my history away at all. Because I'm pulling out Dr. Ben now and Dr. Clark. A lot of Dr. Clark I've been playing lately. And Amos Wilson he was not a historian. Amos Wilson was a psychologist.
Uh-huh.
And Naeem Akbar, another one, psychologist. And we needed that compilation of all to get it all. You see, when I was in New York, I went everywhere. I went to rituals. I went to all kinds of things. I remember the first time I went to Sheffrin's thing. They put me, and this sister went with me, put us up in the balcony because it was the first time ever going there, and stuff. And it was like seeing the show to me, boy, it was deep. They were drinking this gin and rum. I was supposed to be, taking it and putting it on folks so they supposed to get they blown out, all that kind of stuff. And it was, man, my mouth was hanging and I was looking, oh my God, look at this. It was deep. And
You got gone to the conference in South Carolina.
oh,
You were there been privy to a lot of Mississippi.
that woman that came in from Africa, and she read everybody who wanted to be read, didn't speak a lick English. She was in this church in East New York, in Brooklyn,
Uh-huh.
and then she went down to Gullah.
Mm-hmm.
She went to Gullah, and I could have killed myself, but I didn't know. I missed a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have this thing, I think it's in June, in Brooklyn at the Coney Island. Coney Island. Where they take you in different islands of water and all kinds of stuff. Oh, I go to all of it, but I missed that Gullah Island thing. I wish I had better read. Tell me what's up, because I'm tired of guessing. But, but like I'm saying, ASCAC is still into history.
Yes. They grounded very, very deeply in that.
Yes.
But in history, don't say history is nothing to do with evolution. You didn't say that, did you?
I don't think that came out of my mouth. I said they hadn't grown. That's what it is. That's what it stick with that.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that one, aspect is playing a role.
Yes.
The aspect, in a large, by and large, deals in the university setting and have a lot of intellectuals. Like take the New Jack scholars of just almost now, that's the early 90s when the New Jack scholars came along. They took these kids who were, students in their undergraduate degree. Now a lot of those students like Mario Beatty and Valencia Watkins and what's the other young guy? Greg McIntyre. These students, they are doctors, they are PhDs who are doing wonderful research. They, bringing up a lot of other people under them. So when you talk about these kids who, 15 years ago were, undergrads, now they have students under them. They are, raising up other people. You're talking about a role that Aztec plays in that process. So it's not just a matter of Aztec. It's not just a matter of, Aztec plays a particular role in that process. You can't undervalue that. That's a critical role. And so the thing is also the whole evolutionary process we talk about. It's not just about understanding. A lot of people are introduced. I remember when we were here, we came, we were costumes. We came to Aztec Congress, and that's how a lot of us got exposed to, just seeing it from getting exposed to African Nile Valley civilization. That's not stuff that was common knowledge. And so, turning that role and having those studies, oh my gosh.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they should be
back, when you go back to 1983, you dealing with, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Dr., and then under them you had coming under them Dr. Jeffries and A.C. Hilliers and those people, James Farmer. Now, here you go, you got, Reagan and Chives and the Blake Watkins and my babies and a whole other generation of scholars that's coming up. So that's growth.
Well, from that angle, yes, they've grown, but not
But here's another angle in which they were growing. When I first started to call ASCAP, they weren't talking about study business. And now ASCAP is involved in study business, and that is where the students who are part of study groups and whatnot are now, some of them are now full members of the leadership group who are still guiding ASCAP into other areas of involvement as well. So we can go right into that situation. But you're taking children who are completely unaware, first of all, that there was such a thing as ASCAP. And now these same children that some of us, like families, that said we have followed them since the Middle Ages. And they are now presenting and holding leadership roles in ASCAP. So all of that constitutes growth. And growth.
Well, what do you call, since you say they have not grown, then what would be considered growing?
There's nothing wrong with teaching the newer generation what you know. I'm not saying that. I was silly to say that. They're in the same bag. They have not changed. They don't grow. I think that the work that Charles Finch and Richard King, in a sense, is in vain. Some of the work that they have come, I bet you a lot of people don't understand what they know they're talking about.
Why would you assume that?
Because.
No, I asked you that because you would have to be on top of it that well.
Yeah.
Now, have you be serious now, honestly? Have you been that well on top of it?
I think I have been, I don't know.
Maybe you would,
Maybe because I went everywhere. There's a
an
difference.
interpretation of what you mean by
I used to go to First World. I remember when I started going to First World. That's the thing with ASCAP, because ASCAP comes out of First World. Okay. First World is the parent group for ASCAP.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
I don't think you are.
And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think you're
First World started in 1978, and out of First World came ASCAP in 1983. Okay? That's how that began. And First World had already been there, and who started First World was Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark. More, I think it was Dr. Ben, I'm not sure. I'm not real sure which one had the more priority in both of them equally. I'm not sure.
I didn't know that either one of them started First World.
No. First World started,
Dr. Langer.
Yeah.
And,
Now you're talking.
yeah.
Wait a
I
minute.
know he was going to initiate First World.
Kareem?
Yeah.
Karinga, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I know.
And if I'm not mistaken, Chancellor Williams was a part of First World also.
Who?
Chancellor Williams.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I know there was two of them, and then of course there were others that started First World.
Well, I know Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark started First World down there in New York. Wherever First World is out
the glass guy.
What?
Yeah, one of the people who were in First World are now back, I know there are two women who were part of ASCAP and left to go to become a part of First World, and now they are back with ASCAP.
Well, First World was first.
Yeah.
And ASCAP came out of First World. I've even talked to, what's the guy here that represents, ASCAP? Yeah, talked to him. And, some other people who are in the mix, they know what's going on.
Yeah.
What's his name? Kepper. I mean, her name is Kepper. Kepper.
Sister Kepper.
Sister Kepper.
She is
And
the
Brother
one
Bill.
she is one that I'm speaking of now. She became a part of First World. She left ASCAP, became a part of First World, and now she's back with ASCAP. Sister Kepper.
Her and Brother Bill.
Bill's back also.
Well, I hear that First World is stopped now, right?
No, not completely.
I'm not sure because you know, sometimes you have to measure your information.
Mm-hmm.
And, everything I hear, I don't agree with and I don't believe. So don't even have that smile on your face.
Who's that?
I said everything I hear, and people tell me they don't mean I believe everything.
You don't believe that for what you're talking about.
Yeah, but when
But you want us to believe that, though.
continually tell me, and then I have faith, you know, that go back, and they give you history of First World, they give you a history of ASCAP. They can lie too. So I'm just going by what the
Okay, now First World, in their orientation or their approach, was it political, scientific, or was it historical?
history.
You sure?
That's what I got out of it. I remember when I went to First World for the first time myself, might have been in '84, somewhere around in that area. And so I got history. I got a lot of history out of it. But then they have other people besides historians. They come in there. They don't have just history. Because this man, Dr. Edwin, everybody say he's Queen, the one that breaks down the cultures of the people. He tells you what Asians, Africans, and Europeans. Nicholas, thank you. Dr. Edwin Nicholas, that's the first time I heard him was there. And
That First World.
I got the audio. He was great. He was really something.
Well, they've been separating in the beginning on the basis of intellectualism. It wasn't about that.
Well, it seems like that if you didn't have a doctorate degree, you could
Sometimes organizations.
I don't know where you got that from, sister.
Well, you tell me who's not a doctor that talked it.
That don't mean that the particular point that you're making is so. That don't make it so.
Give me an example of something that has grown in comparison to the fact that it hasn't grown, so we get an idea what you mean when you say it hasn't grown.
What we're gonna do is and we're gonna do this off camera, right? Or you want it on camera? I don't know if you can even hear it. Let me see. Because I don't hear nothing over here.
You got all camps.
Huh?
If you can really do something now, you got all camps.
Yeah, let's do it off camera. Okay, because I'm not getting anything here. Except a lot of noise. This is yeah. Let's give Brother Iman